All right, guys. So I've got an amazing guest with me today. This is Paul Croteau, and Paul has his own YouTube channel where he talks about sync licensing, stock licensing, and various aspects, including a lot of the really troubling and challenging topics that we've been diving into on this channel lately regarding AI music, and specifically AI models training off of copyrighted music without getting consent, without licensing it, asking for permission, or paying. Paul put out a really, I think, a great video, provocative video, and something that helped me understand that he's coming from a completely different place with this. And it was challenging for me to listen to it and hear it, but at the same time, when I get challenged by stuff, I usually try to run towards it, because what I think Paul might be able to provide for us that have got a lot of investment in sync licensing and in the side of the business is maybe we have some blind spots about where we are with the technology, where we are with the law, what might be happening in the future. And so Paul and I, probably the one thing that we disagree on is the requirement that for-profit AI models that want to go train off of copyrighted music, whether that's Spotify or production music library or any source, anything online that's copyrighted, these models going and training off of those without getting consent and claiming that that's a fair use case, and then going and creating for-profit business models on top of that data that it was trained upon. I definitely feel that that's going to be a violation of the fair use law. I also don't think that that feels good for us that have been creating music for all of our lives. Paul sees it differently, and so that's really what I wanted to bring Paul on this channel to talk about. Now, we're going to disagree on this, so I want to make sure that everybody feels that if you guys disagree with me or Paul, it's totally fine. Have your opinion and leave it below. But of course, it's got to be respectful. We are definitely in a very challenging moment. There's a lot of emotions being kicked up right now. So anything that's trolling, anything that's completely disrespectful to Paul or to myself will just be blocked. Okay, I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. We don't expect everybody to agree with us, but keeping it respectful is always required.
Absolutely.
We definitely want to make sure that we are, keeping our humanity intact while we are being challenged by AI technology. So Paul, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your time. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of a backstory on you, your music, your career with sync, with stock. What are you doing in the background of all this?
Sure thing. So I entered the sync music business much later than you did. I think you started in 08, 09. I jumped in around 2016, 2017. My music is entirely in sync. I don't do stock. I've had a decent amount of success. I've got about 1,500 registered tracks out there, which is, a fraction of what you've got, Jess. You've been very prolific and very successful, and I respect that. So I'm working hard to generate a lot of music, but again, 100% sync. My music's been used in nearly 100 different unique TV series, a couple of feature films, etc. So it's out there. My background education is in music. I went to college for music, but then I got in it, toured the world as a sideman. Then I got into technology. So I've been working in the technology field the past 3 decades or so, data center, cloud. I haven't dipped deep into AI, but I'm a big fan of technology in general. And I think you and I are on the same page as far as that goes. So I've been involved in sync about the past 7, 8 years or so. Most of my music is with exclusive libraries. Right now, I work regularly for about 3 or 4 libraries. I know in some of your past videos, you've talked about what number of libraries is the right number. I'm in lots of libraries, but I focused on 3 or 4 regularly. They keep me busy to the point where I don't need to find new relationships right now. So I write a lot of different genres, largely a lot of hip hop, a lot of tension, drama, piano work, and classic jazz. I'm a saxophone player first, piano second, etc. So I balance work, day job in technology and night job as a TV sync producer. Love the business, but this AI stuff is really disruptive. And so we've got to figure out where we play together somehow.
Absolutely. I think just all the instruments in your background showcase your commitment to your music career. So, and
Yeah,
that's
that's all real.
no small number, 1,500 tracks, man. That is a lot of music. So that's very, very commendable. And the fact that definitely proves that you're taking it seriously and you really have some skin in the game here, that you really are
sure.
putting your full effort.
The goal is to be a secondary income stream. And I think a lot of folks enter sync expecting that, but not understanding how much time, how many years it takes to get any kind of substantive revenue. You had a short I saw recently. You're in the car talking about, would you do it again if you knew how long it takes and how isolated? It's a tough business. And I think a lot of folks are entering the business with false or incorrect expectations of how it works. And that may lead to the concerns about AI. And we can talk about that in a minute, but it's a tough, fickle, subjective industry, and AI is just throwing a wrench in the whole mess.
Absolutely. So let's just dive into this point. This is the one point where you and I see things a little differently. So give us your case, your reasoning, your understanding of why you do feel that AI for-profit companies can train off of copyrighted music without consent, without licensing, without paying for them. Why you do feel that is fair use, that will hold up in courts as fair use, and why. Well, let's just start there. Then we'll go into why that maybe doesn't even bother you that much. But let's go into the, sort of your point of view on that particular subject.
Right. And I appreciate the dialogue. And I'm going to probably trigger some folks, but that's fine, because I've got a different opinion. And I can't commend you enough for saying, let's be peaceful. Let's not have craziness in the comments. In the world today, we need more dialogue and less digging in. And so I love this. And I think there's a certain level of hypocrisy in some folks about fair use, about training. And let me kind of address that. So, for example, Google, YouTube, they have destroyed the concept of fair use. You can look at Paul David's, Adam Neely, Rick Beato's videos on, you put a single chord from a hit song in a video and it gets demonetized. And that is absolutely fair use, but Google shoots it down. How do you educate people without showing examples, whether it's music, art, architecture, sculpture, painting, whatever? That's fair use. So access to content matters. And it seems that in some cases, fair use is a good thing. In some cases, we're not allowed. So that's a frustrating point. And then you look at how we train. Humans learn from copyrighted material. Now, when I learned, I had to drop a needle on a piece of vinyl and then go backwards. And it was, kids today, you've got it so easy. But we learned based on previous existing works. And so I think the angst around AI doing this, using copyrighted materials, is that it just goes at light speed and has unlimited capacity, unlimited learning potential, which we just can't match as humans. So it's not the concept of how AI learns, it's the process that it's exponentially faster that seems to be upsetting people. Now, and I want to add something, kind of a couple sidebars here, because you see this in the comments. Folks will say, well, AI is not going to replace live musicians and concerts. It's not going to replace people. People will always want to go see music. And I also want to make sure that we're clear that I am completely opposed to name, image, likeness concept. I don't want sound-alikes. Those are absolutely illegal. If a rap sounds like Eminem, Eminem should get the credit. And so I don't think sound-alikes are illegal. But copyright is very specific. It's either melody or lyrics. Can't copy that. I'm getting into a different topic here. But why should AI companies get consent? It will be nice ethically, absolutely, if they did consent. That's a debate. But then compensation is an entirely different legal term, and it's mathematical mess. So I don't think you can compensate anyone for public works in a fair way, because when you look at, say, hey, that song is obviously influenced by John Mayer. Well, do we compensate him because your song sounds like him? Well, he learned from Stevie Ray Vaughan, who learned from Hendrix, who learned from Muddy Waters, who learned from Robert Johnson. I mean, there's a history, a lineage. So how far do you go back to compensate? Because John Mayer's not a pioneer. Neither is Trent Reznor, Taylor Swift, Eminem. They're all fantastic at what they do, but they were all influenced by previous artists who were influenced by previous artists. You go back 4 or 5 generations. So at some point, if you say yes, we got to and pay all of them, and then you suddenly dilute the pool of what's available to pay. You mentioned in the video, I'm blanking on the guy's name, the British guy that did the AI company that he sold to
Ed Newton
TikTok.
Rex.
Yeah, great video.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was a very impressive guy. Yep.
He talked about eventually you dilute the pool of revenue, and then no one's making any money. So it's kind of crazy. So I just don't see that there's a way to fairly compensate and accurately compensate. How do you document this stuff? And then when you compensate Eminem for a rap, well, do you have to also compensate the folks that created the sample underneath Eminem? And I mean, it's just logistically impossible to do. So I understand the ethical dilemma. Do we do this? And should artists be able to opt out? Sure, I think that's fine. But then how do you do that? It's like when you ask a library for your tracks back, but they've already been used by networks. Does that mean they've got to go take those tracks out? I think the concept makes sense, but the process and the logistics behind it don't work. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Because what I'm hearing is you're saying in a perfect world, consent would be ethical, right? For
Yes,
for a
yes,
for-profit company to say, hey, we're going to train on the music that you spent your life, collectively to a group of composers, producers,
right.
artists. It would be nice if we could have a system where it's like they
Yeah,
have to go get consent. Either it has to be a one-time fee or a revenue share model or something
right.
where there's a solution, right? So you're saying, though, technically you don't see the solution for that being possible. So because
Right.
there's probably not a possible solution for it, it's sort of a battle we shouldn't be fighting. We should just sort of like accept that that's probably not going to be that's not going to be the hill we should die on, essentially. It's going to
Yeah.
kind of move past. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, we can't. It's something that we literally can't do. So we can argue or debate the ethics of should and what is fair, but fairness in the music industry, those two rarely go together. I mean, you could go backwards and say, how many times have you been asked by clients, I need a sound alike. I need something that sounds like Earth, Wind, and Fire for this commercial, or Travis Tritt for this country song. Okay, so now just in the past year or two, libraries are starting to get away from sound alikes. You can't even use those words in your metadata. I did a rap inspired by Jay-Z or Eminem, whatever. Now libraries are saying, no, 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 don't put that in metadata because we can be sued. So we could have a debate about lawyers and what they're doing to ruin the creative world in the first place, but that's a separate video perhaps.
Right.
But a lot of these legal reactions, I mean, a lot of these library and content reactions are because of legal fear, not musical or creative or common sense, based logic. Sound alikes are issues. And then if you get into sound alikes, what about things like country music or the blues? 12-bar blues, you can't copyright that. BB King's, down, 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 down. He can't copy. Well, that's a melody. You might be able to do that. But country songs sound like previous existing works. So does a song substantially sound like something different? Another existing work. When you get into courts, it's an absolute mess. When you look at all of the court cases around, Robin Thicke, Pharrell Williams, et cetera, and the Constitution in America guarantees a jury of our peers. Well, that means that we should have a jury of musicians, not a jury of the common man that can be fooled by a creative lawyer that says, well, this Robin Thicke Pharrell song sounds an awful lot like the Marvin Gaye songs, even though there's no melodic or lyrical replication. It feels the same, therefore it's a violation. That opened the door to a whole bunch of stuff. I thought Ed Sheeran got screwed out of his deal. Katy Perry lost against an unknown Christian rapper, but thank God she won an appeal. The Bee Gees versus Ronald Sells. How Deep Is Your Love? A song they never heard, but the jury said, well, it sounds like it. So, I mean, we get into these crazy decisions that aren't based on facts and data. When the Katy Perry thing happened, I did an Instagram post showing the melody and the beat of the two songs, and they were different. And that should suffice. Here's the mathematical proof that these are different. I actually got interviewed by CBC, the NPR of Canada, about that topic. But the court said, the jury said, no, they sound similar enough. And then, of course, she won an appeal, thank God. But there's a lot of stuff that makes this incredibly complex. It's not clear and cut. The business is not fair. Is it fair to string players that East West has a great library? Is it fair to musicians that are classically trained like me, are competing with people that drag dots in piano scroll mode until they find something like Deadmau5 does? Is it fair to true composers that someone takes a bunch of splice loops and layers them and calls it music? There's no musical creativity. It's just an ear. So fairness is often used when it really carries no legal merit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, I think probably the key distinction that I'm seeing, I'm curious your thoughts on this, is all of your points are absolutely valid. I agree with it. Like this idea of like, we're all inspired by the greats that came before us. Right. So this idea of like, we're going to have to compensate every artist we ever inspired by. Yeah, of course, that's just like a knot you can't untangle. I think it is that sort of differentiation, though, between, and not necessarily the speed of how quickly AI models can generate music, but in the fair use doctrine, there's the 4 elements of what constitutes fair use, or what factors courts will look at in terms of, as you were copying copyrightable material, did you do it in a fair use context? And the 4th one is devaluing the original value of the copyright works, right? So one example, or one way you would kind of measure that is to say, is the output of these for-profit models competing directly with the copyright owner's music that it was trained upon, right? Because if it's competing directly, these AI models are obviously going to be cheaper. They're obviously going to be easier to use. And my point of view has been, I don't know if you follow, I'm sure that Red Lobster, kind of ridiculous thing that happened. But, what was interesting about that is that, it's the first major food chain that went to AI. We don't know which one they use. My guess is Suno or Udio because, those are the sort of leading models that can give you vocals. My guess is they hired some kid that prompt engineered, a mixtape of tracks, some more hip hop and country. And, all their lyrics are ridiculous about their new menu items. Maybe coincidentally, Red Lobster is going bankrupt soon, I've been hearing, so maybe that's part of why they took this risk. I don't know. But anyways, regardless, though, imagine, Red Lobster wanted to do that, and they wanted to go actually make a real mixtape with real musicians. How would they have done that? Well, they have to go pay a lot of people, right? They're going to have to go pay producers and songwriters and vocalists and mixing engineers and all the people, or maybe go to a production music library and maybe get some existing instrumental tracks, adding their own vocals, whatever. Either way, if they wanted to secure that gig, put that music out, they would have had to go pay human composers. But instead of doing that, they went to an AI generative model, which I'm guessing was a for-profit company. We don't know. And used them for a much cheaper price, I'm very sure. So there's one, for me, I'm clear your response to this. That's one clear example of how generative AI violated the fair use doctrine, because they did immediately, I think clearly replace a gig from the music that they were trained upon. So what do you think about that? What is your thought on that?
I get that, but this been going. Technology replaces gigs all the time. Drum machines were supposed to replace drummers. Samples are replacing orchestra players. Session musicians are hurting because the technology changes. But when you get a brief from a library, hey, you got a client, fast-moving deadline on a beer commercial or a food commercial. We want a song that sounds like the Rolling Stones, but so now you got sound alike, fast turnaround, can't afford the Stones. So you get some guy that rocks out the guitar and plays a great sounding thing. Does that devalue the Rolling Stones credits and revenues? Does the prevalence of DAWs in the world devalue the quality of music? Does the fact that 80,000 new tracks are uploaded every day online to streaming services, does that devalue the content out there? People say, bruh, there's a bunch of sterile, soulless music out there that AI is generating. I'm like, bruh, there's thousands of composers creating really crappy, soulless, bad music out there. And the AI companies, are they just generating a bunch of stuff and presenting it as a catalog? Or are people like you and me and other folks going and generating this stuff using their tool? Because the tool is not generating, a user has to generate. So in the case of the Red Lobster thing, and RIP, they're going bankrupt, we know that. But did they hire a musician and he used it as a tool to meet a quick deadline? Did they hire an intern to just say prompt this stuff? Because I've been playing with Suno and Udio, and you've got to tweak it. You got to try again. There's a lot of flaws and lacking features. You can't go back and say, regenerate that same thing. The vocal cadences come out and it's luck of the draw. You got to do a lot of extra work. So there's musical skill involved. I would love to know, Jesse, who actually did that for Red Lobster. Did they have an on-staff composer? Did they go to a music library? Who did that? But that's a job for someone. Maybe it's just cheaper hiring the kid down the street to mow your lawn versus a professional lawn service. Are you devaluing the lawn service because you gave a kid a gig? So it's such a tenuous tightrope discussion. And speaking of the tool, tools are tools. Users dictate the value. For example, in the video with the I forget the TikTok guy.
Ed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He did articles about, if you use artist names, if you say, instead of Elton John, you say Belton Ron,
right?
And, you're prompting it to try to trick it to create, a Tiny Dancer or Staying Alive, whatever. The AI company is not breaking any laws of copyright. The user of the tool is telling the tool, I want you to create an Elton John sound alike. The person is making this machine create content that violates copyright. The tool's logic, it's just a stupid computer that does what you tell it. So if you figure out a way to prompt it to fake it and say, give me a Taylor Swift pop song about breakup, and you do all these things and you get something that sounds like that, AI is just saying, I have all these keywords, I have all these data, these acoustical references, yada, yada. This person's saying, generate this. Well, I'm going to generate that because they told me to. There's no feelings, there's no free thought or emotion. It's just giving you what the composer, the user, is telling it to do. So AI is not breaking copyright. The person prompting it is the one breaking copyright. That may bend some noodles there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, because I've actually just this morning, I'll be putting a video out on it, is longtime kind of subscriber let me know that he was able to prompt in Christmas music without actually putting in a lot of those like tricky prompts to try to get it to do it. And I think, I mean, I can't confirm this yet. We're going to dive into it, but I think the creators of Udio did not put, they thought all Christmas music was public domain. So I think a lot of their quality controls were not put on it. So this guy actually just put in very easy, like Christmas song about jingle bells. And what came out was kind of like the most popular Christmas songs that are not in public domain that you can think of. So we're going to put a video on that. But you're absolutely right. It's an interesting dilemma of, you know, you go to these websites and they say, hey, if you're going to prompt us, you gotta make sure that you have copyright clearance to do it. And that's the sort of question we have is like, well, okay, so we have to have copyright clearance, but do you have copyright clearance for doing what you're doing, right? It's this kind of like,
it's just a tool.
It is, yeah, and it's hard to figure that out. I'm hoping the courts will help us, and some sort of ruling will help us kind of sort all this kind of stuff out. Because obviously we want to be safe, and I don't want, you know, I've been kind of cautioning my subscribers about if you're going to use these tools and put them out online, we're kind of in the Wild West right now. We don't really know where anything's going to settle, so just obviously be cautious and careful with this. So one distinction that I have in my mind, I'm curious if you have a similar distinction or you're seeing it not the same way I am. Whereas a lot of the things that you had talked about, you know, the drum machine, DAWs, all these kind of forms of technology, absolutely, they replace a lot of work, a lot of gigs, and they sort of help us march forward technological wise. And actually, thank God, because without those tools, I don't have a career doing sync. I'm sure you don't have a career doing sync. So we need VSTs and virtual instruments and all these kind of drum machines, all these things. To me, it feels like those are, and I'm pro those, I really like those, but I feel like those are in a separate category here only because I don't believe their creation depended on them training off of existing copyright content. They were sort of natural, organic, whatever, developments in the tech music space. Whereas these AI models might, obviously the new tech is the neural nets that they're obviously being trained off of, but you have nothing in there, you have nothing, right? Like what is ChatGPT if it has no text data of the entire internet in its database? So it feels like to me, it's really dependent on existing copyright music. So what do you think about that distinction between some tech that it's just sort of growing in its own whatever maturity, whereas others are developed building on top of and using and depending on specifically existing copyright works?
Yeah. So did the DAWs hurt the studio, recording studio market? Yes. Did drum machines hurt drummers? Debatable. I don't think so. The string libraries hurt orchestras and session musicians? Absolutely, in my case, in my opinion. But you're right. They're not trained on public data, but all those musicians that were hurt were trained on public data. So those things, they don't make noise. They don't create. Whereas, AI music generators do. You give them information, they generate something new. So I definitely can understand that perspective. AI tools create, they don't just make noise when you touch them. So yeah, I see that. I definitely see the nuances and the difference there. As to, I kind of lost my train of thought there as to how AI. See, it's the whole publicly available. Is a YouTube video of a copyrighted work, could that be argued it's public domain because it's publicly available on the internet for free? There are myriad copyrighted works on videos of songs on YouTube that are not released by Sony Music or Warner Brothers. It's some European no-name account playing a full record of a jazz classic. I mean, but they let it happen. Does that mean that it's now publicly available? You talked about the Christmas project. I'm looking forward to seeing that video. Public domain versus non-public domain. Who owns the logic, the decision behind how those songs got created? The transparency. I'm kind of going off the rails a little bit here, but the transparency is not there. The AI companies, I totally agree with you that they should be showing how they train their data, what they train their data on. But also the quality of the training could be in question. I did a video last year on Google LM because they had some great access to information. And I said, okay, you can search by category, by instrument. Okay, let's see what the saxophone music sounds like. And they showed all the tracks from YouTube that they took 10 seconds of to learn saxophone music. So let me provide some insight on that. The way Google LM last year was training its models, it would scrub YouTube because Google owns YouTube. And it would search videos that had saxophone as a keyword or in the title. And then it would randomly pick a 10-second clip and put that audio in its database. And Google LM actually shares all those videos. And it's not just, Kenny G and John Coltrane and, Dave Koz, but it was like some dude's senior recital in high school or some crazy meme from wherever. It was horribly what's the word I'm looking for? Screened. When I started looking at the examples, like that's not a saxophone, that's actually a bass clarinet, but he's not even playing in that 10-second slip. The drummer's playing right now. So garbage in, garbage out, I think was the title of the video. And so the training quality is really questionable in many cases. I would love to see the transparency. How does Suno and Udio train? Where did they get their data? So I'm kind of dancing around this. I completely agree with you, Jesse. We should know where this data got trained. I wonder, do Suno and Udio, did they buy someone else's catalog and they're using that? Did they contract with Google or YouTube? Did they go scrape it? And then how would you scrape legally? You would have to, I'm just thinking logistics. Do you have to watch every YouTube music video?
I can tell you, I actually did talk to a data scientist on my channel probably about a year ago, and he said, no, every single song on Spotify, there's a 30-second little preview you can get if you're not a member. Each one of those has its own URL. So I'm sure, I'm not a hacker or a computer programmer, but you could basically just build a bot that just crawls through Spotify's database, and you don't need a whole song to train off of it. You just need the 30 seconds. So basically, as long as you can figure out a way to automatically get all of those URLs and pull up that audio or whatever it does, it's technically very, I didn't know it was either until I asked somebody.
Yeah, let me see the details behind it. I know we know China's been doing it for years, because I used to use SoundCloud, and then people said, don't use that because it's being hacked. So I would just do private links. Somehow private things that were not public were being sucked into China, because I remember 2 or 3 years ago or more, I think it was pre-COVID actually, my work and a bunch of other folks from Taxi and other clients of mine, their songs were found in this website that was based out of China. And like, dude, that was never public. How did they get that? So the tech is there, but man, we need transparency to find out how exactly it works.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like if it's on the internet, it can be accessed. I think we should all just kind of assume that. It's one
words
question.
Have never been spoken.
Yeah, it's one question I've been kind of rolling around with a lot of library owners right now, which is, I'm sure a lot of production music library catalogs have been already trained off of. But I wonder, is it a smart move for more production music libraries to keep all of their catalog behind a password protected membership area, at least for now? Not take it off the internet, of course, but just make sure that only people that are their clients, because some libraries do that. I'd say like 5 to 10% of them don't allow you to just go look and listen to all their catalog. But 90, I recommend libraries as part of one of my services, and like 90% of them, it's just open for the entire internet to be accessing. And I've been wondering if a lot of library owners should start to put up password protected areas and have a notice on there that's like no unauthorized access to this. So if the fair use, if we're not able to win on this fair use concept, at least there's a chance that library owners could say, hey, you hacked, basically. You broke into private property, private digital property that you did not have access to. So we're going to get you on that at least. So like that's my point of view on that. I have one final I guess distinction that we'll get your point of view, and then we'll move on to. I'm really curious about why you're not too phased about any of this, which is really the more interesting part for me. But I think really where this comes down to is this kind of feeling that AI is something new, right? Whereas we all agree, I agree with you, that like AI is training off of music the same way that you and I are. There's no distinction there. Of course, its capabilities are like superhuman, and that is definitely getting us a little nervous and concerned about like, what does this mean for us? How do we compete in a world where this thing can just generate it unlimited? It is this kind of interesting new dilemma that I think the courts are going to start to think about is, should we just be associating fair use laws that exist, and those are not like ancient history, those are only around since 1976. Should we be applying those to AI? Like, is it just basically like, another technology, but same old, we're going to basically just use the same framework, apply it to this new technology, and just keep moving forward? Or is this fundamentally kind of like a new paradigm? Because the reason why the 1976 fair use doctrine was enacted was because of the new tech, television, radio, all the new mediums that were basically sharing clips like on the news and, sharing little clips, whatever. We were kind of figuring out, okay, we've got this new way to share a lot of new content. We need a framework for how much of a piece of copyrighted material can I put in my newscast without getting sued, or how much can I sample something, or how much can I remix something, or parody, or whatever, right? So we needed some sort of a, framework, which is, of course, is very flexible. It's not a rigid one, but it's very flexible. So I think that's kind of where a lot of this is coming down to. Will we just sort of treat AI as just the next thing that fits into our current paradigm? Or is it going to require that we fundamentally go back to the drawing board and create a whole new legal framework where we don't grant human rights, human creator rights to algorithms, to AI machines? So what are your thoughts on that debate?
Yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot, Jesse.
I know. Sorry, I laid a lot on you there.
No, that's good. That's good. No, I have little faith that the government will get it right. And that's not a political statement. That's just historical based on facts. They
I
still
would
haven't
agree.
figured out. They still haven't figured out whether or not Facebook and Instagram, et cetera, are media or social platforms because they're getting away with a whole lot of stuff uh, that the press or the print can't. I mean, they're way behind. And then you look at the age of the average person in Congress, is it 70 or something or higher? They don't understand this stuff at all. And so I don't see them making things better. They're going to find some cute acronym, that's going to make people think they're doing the right thing. And then they're going to write a bunch of stuff that makes zero sense, that can't be enforced, and then follow the money. Who's gonna write legislation? Are Sony, Warner Brothers gonna write it? Is Spotify gonna write it? I mean, who knows who's gonna write this stuff? So I have zero faith in the government to get it right. So that brings it back to the community. We can make statements that I will not, as a library owner, accept AI music, or I, as a music editor at CBS or ABC, whatever, will accept AI generated music. We're very, very close, if not already there, to the point where you can't tell the difference. And when I was messing around with Suno last week, I'm like, I created, and you see my live reactions on my video. I'm like, my jaw drops. I'm like, close your eyes, put dialogue over it. This is completely acceptable from a musical and audio quality perspective to run under dialogue. Because Frank, face it, all of you sync composers out there, you have to strain to hear your music a lot of times on a TV show in the first place. All the time we spent panning and EQing and delay timings, et cetera. And they don't care. You can barely hear the dang thing. So we're just happy to get those 35 cents for that 18-second play. It's a tough situation. So help me again, prompt me the main topic of this question, as I just derailed
Basically
myself
about like,
again.
what are your thoughts on basically applying human laws
Human law.
to
Yeah.
AI algorithms? That's kind of, I think, what we're really getting to here.
Yeah, I mean, the AI algorithms were created by humans. Is AI a person? Like, is a business a person as far as, election funding and voting goes? Is AI a musician? I think a court, you mentioned this in the past, a court has said you cannot copyright AI generated material.
Right.
But okay, well, what if I generate a country song and, oh no, let's do something, an EDM track or anything. I generate it. It can't be copyrighted. Now, let me bend your noodle. If I or you recreate that track musically, the form, the chords, the bass, the guitar, the pads, and the lyrics, and I re-sing it with my voice, I recorded the instruments on my wall, is that now my track? Or is it a cover of a non-copyrightable musical entity? That makes my head explode. So I actually last night on a stream that you and I watch occasionally, Michael had a lawyer, a music lawyer on, and he was confused and said, "That's an interesting question, because if it's not copyrightable, but now you created it, so you now own the master recording, and so now that's your song. So you could use AI to generate ideas, and that's how I see it. And that's where I'm stuck, and maybe you're turning my head in a different direction, which is why we're having this dialogue. I see AI as a musical idea generator, a lyric generator as well. Although 95% of my stuff is instrumental, it gives me a groove, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to create something new based on that. I may actually sample the AI. I actually had Google LM generate a kabuki theater type sounding thing, and it sounded accurate to me. And I took a little section of that and I chopped it and made it my own and included it behind a trap hip hop beat, and it worked out great. So does AI get credit? I think that's fair use. So we get this legal situation where we need to clearly better define fair use. We need to make sure that it's consistently applied. Talking at you, Google. That's a nerve on me, by the way. So, we have to identify fair use. We have to identify what compensation models make sense, a way to cleanly opt out if you want to. And I think that's something you want to get into, why I don't mind my music being used. Um, it's a very complex legal question. And given the current climate in the US, I don't see it as becoming a priority anytime soon. All we can do is live on our own ethics and morals, work with libraries that we agree with. If you don't want to do AI music, that's fine. I am a big fan of learn the new technology, learn how to use it as a tool instead of getting replaced by it. Case in point, many, many years ago, my dad was an artist. He would go to the museums and sketch all the greats. And his day job was a draftsman. The guys that would draw with pencil and rulers and stuff. He actually worked for a company that was designing cooling systems for nuclear reactors, very complex drawings, etc. and he was very, very good at it. He moved up the ladder. But then this thing called AutoCAD came out. And we would see it today. It's very rudimentary, but it replaced humans with computers, entirely exactly what's going on today. And my dad, being the stubborn, creative person that he was, refused to engage, refused to learn AutoCAD. And a couple of years later, he lost his job and never worked again, which led to a whole other bunch of issues we won't talk about. But he was replaced by tech. So this is a near and dear thing to me. If he had embraced it, he could have taken his great skills and moved up the ladder and mentored other draftsmen, et cetera. I have that same mindset today. Learn the technology, maybe embrace is too strong of a word, but learn what it is and isn't. Try to separate your feelings about it with what it does, and find a way for this tool to make your workflow better. Because whoever that kid or person was that gave Red Lobster the ad got paid. And for most of us here watching, you want to get paid for music creation, whether it's your heartfelt string quartet or a hip hop loop that you generated with a proper prompt. Um, whether or not you can claim credit for it is another story, but you got to ask yourself, step back. Why are you doing music sync? Why do you watch Jesse's show regularly with all this great content? Why do you subscribe to Taxi? Why do you reach out to libraries trying to get connected to and go to events? It's because you want your music to be heard. You want, is it vanity? Is it your fame? Is it the rush of hearing something you created on TV and you can say, I did that? Figure out why you're pursuing music, and then look at how good are you at it. If you're just dabbling and this is like, oh, it'll be fun to try and get on TV, Jesse will be the first guy to tell you it's a freaking slog. It takes you years, and it's nothing but rejection 19 times out of 20. If you're not prepared for that, why are you here in the first place? So I think a lot of the folks that are concerned about this don't have the skills to deliver a product in the first place, or the business acumen, the discipline that you and I have to properly communicate in a professional manner to our clients, meeting deadlines, being professional, understanding feedback is not criticism, it's just recommendations, etc. And I also sort of wonder, and trigger alert, how many people out there today complaining that AI is stealing your music gigs are using illegal copies of DAWs and sample libraries and loops? I mean, come on, folks. When I started my business, when I started Yo Poly Music in 2015, made it absolutely clear everything I use is purchased, and it was expensive. And I reinvest in the business, but I don't have a single illegally owned, downloaded. I forget what the word is for the torrent. I don't have any torrents or anything like that. Everything I own is legal. So if anyone's out there using copyright, I mean, I'm looking at you, Kanye. If you're using, illegal copied stuff, there's a little bit of hypocrisy there as well. If you downloaded a catalog of music from Napster 20 or 30 years ago, whatever that was, that hypocrisy comes in again. So there's the human element, the feelings element, and there's the rational business side, which I think you and I absolutely agree on. And it's a murky, ugly swamp of legal and ethical stuff. How do we fix it? I don't know. Choose your morals, stand on them, be vocal about it, and accept the opinions of others. And rant.
Love it, man. Yeah, and I think we're definitely both on the same page there. I've been kind of championing that, sort of being open and curious about the technology,
Yes.
using all these tools, mixing, mastering tools, synth designers, all the cool new things, prompting to kind of get your ideas going. A lot of our members are definitely using that, and I think you're absolutely right. So, Paul, I want to ask you the sort of $1,000,000 question. The reason why that last video on your channel, You Are Wrong About AI Generated Music, got me thinking, and you guys should go click on the link below and subscribe to Paul's videos. He's got some great, or his channel, he's got some great videos there. You sound like you weren't too phased about it, and you were actually okay with AI music training off your music without consent, without compensation. Right. So I'm curious, like, why is that not bothering you that much? And then what do you see for your future, your personal future with sync, with whatever you're doing with your music?
Great question. So I've had a change of heart on this. There's a short I did a while back when we learned that music libraries were providing their content to AI companies without our consent as composers, and I was ticked. And so I did a short. I'm like, why would you give your music to a technology that's going to replace you? And that was, I don't know, 5-6 months ago. This is how quickly we're moving at internet speed now. So I had a very strong opinion. No, do not say yes. Yeah, you made $25. Whee! But now they know how your music works. But then I thought, I was a little arrogant on my part. If you look at the statistics involved, how much music is being used to train AI? How many millions of tracks are being used? And what is my music doing that's going to influence that training? I'm not creating any, I'm not an innovator. I'm not Picasso. I'm not, Mozart or Jerry Lee Lewis or Prince or whatever. I'm not an innovator creating. I'm just my catalog is me setting grooves, creating moods for my library clients. Almost 99.9% of music on the internet under my name was specifically written for sync music. It's not my musical creations, with the exception of the album I just released about my mom, solo piano stuff. I have no statistical influence on how AI learns. It's I'm not my works are not going to change or provide any value. They may reinforce concepts, the frequency relations between drums and bass and kick and snare and tempo and things like that. But I don't see me, I'm just one person in a crowd of billions, literally, probably. And I don't see my music having any validity, statistical significance to the models. So I'd rather, instead of worrying about, man, they're stealing my stuff, well, my stuff is borrowed from the various things I learned from. I'd rather focus on learning the technology, making it something that I can use to work faster, smarter, instead of harder and slower and getting angry. So I just think I'm a drop in the bucket. It's not going to matter. And I don't know, Jesse, am I off on that? Am I missing
There's no
something
such thing as
morally?
you being off because it's your point of view. So no,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong here. It's just that's why I really wanted to just ask you, like, why is it not so maybe as concerning to you as it is to me? And I totally take that point where yes, we are probably a small, tiny fraction. And you're absolutely right. Let's be real. Like what we're doing in sync licensing is usually not breaking new ground and
Yeah.
inventing new genres or sounds. In fact, it's almost the antithesis of what we do. We need
Yeah.
to follow briefs, follow reference tracks, create something like something else, kind of be the cheaper option of the more maybe expensive artist track that they want to use, but they can't afford it. So they kind of bring us in there. So in that way, we are sort of the AI in this space. So I totally, that point absolutely stands. I totally understand that. I'm curious for you, like, do you feel like this is motivating you to be more groundbreaking, maybe go less in terms of trying to just emulate other reference tracks, but really try to create tomorrow's music rather than just kind of
Yeah.
emulating what others have done already?
Yeah, I mean, you can prompt AI to create really weird stuff. Give me a cat-based, rock and roll polka featuring low brass instruments, creating sounds that no one ever think of, and then chopping, looping, being creative. It's instead of pouring through vinyl boxes. I miss that so much. Going through vinyl, reading liner notes, finding gems, which samplers did for for decades. We have tools that create sounds that we're looking for, and you can use those. Like I mentioned, the Kabuki Theater Orchestra earlier. There AI has a chance to create opportunity, and again, embrace the technology, learn how to use it, be the tool user, not the tool replacement. For example, let me offer some other mind benders, perhaps. There's a female vocalist earlier this year that said, yes, use my voice. And
Grimes.
so I mean, I don't sing. I don't if I did, I might be down with, hey, use my voice and give me a cut, give me 25%, or give me, maybe there's a revenue opportunity there if you've got a distinct, unique voice, as long as it doesn't sound like anybody else. So you could generate revenue that way. What about this? Maybe a closing thought. If there's enough frustration with AI generated music, let's assume that the naysayers are correct and say, this is a bunch of soulless, generic sounding music. You're flooding the market. You're damaging the value. Your fourth point you mentioned, it's a glut of crappy music out there. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that creates an increase in demand for live musicians. And you and I can get back on stage and play live because people are craving real soulful music. So does AI somehow secondarily generate an increase in demand for our actual skills that real artists are going to get more work, which means more clubs will appear because they need more live music. And so more gigs for us, more business for them, and an increase in live music. Maybe it's a stretch, but is it really? I don't know. Maybe AI is going to cause a revolution of new live music as a revolt in response to what people call the soulless stuff. Now, I will say, and I think a lot of the folks that are complaining, they've not checked out Suno and Udio this month. It literally came out this month, April of 2024. They The quality is solid. I did something and I said, give me a Brooklyn-based, a funky beat. I'm like, dang, that's grooving. I could do that. That sounds fantastic. It's creating realistic sounding music. A lot of the folks complaining, I don't think they've heard the latest. You need to go out there and check it out. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen, Jesse? It's a crazy world. Better to not put your head in the sand. Learn how to use the tools And then maybe you could be the person that Red Lobster reaches out to say, hey, we got a commercial due tomorrow. Can you crank out something for us? And you get paid. Isn't that what most of you watching today are looking for, is compensation and some fame? It's possible.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to definitely agree with you there, and I've been kind of saying that on my channel for the last years, I do predict the same thing where when you have a glut of, whatever derivative music that kind of all starts to sound a little bit more like itself, then people will, I think, naturally go for, hey, we want an organic section, right, of the supermarket. Yes. And that's what I think there will be a sort of a verification process we'll probably need. And I think especially in sync licensing, there's going to be some opportunities where people are going to say, we really want the organic human created stuff for some opportunities. But for the background instrumental, whatever, people aren't really even hearing it anyways, just setting a sort of generic mood. We're going to save a buck, and we're going to probably go into that direction. So I think you're right. There'll probably be, like with every paradigm, there's like a little nugget of the previous paradigm that holds to. Like people are still, they're still record labels, even though they probably lost their relevancy. There's still recording studios, even though I've got a home studio in front of me, you've got one. There's still a handful of the previous paradigm that usually holds on to it, right, for a little while. People are still riding horses, mostly for fun, but they're still around, right? And there's still a business, though, around horse breeding and horse riding, right? So that's why I think you probably won't see 100% wipe out of human creators, of course. But I share your optimism there about embracing the technology, being open to it, learning how to use it to enhance yourself. But my caveat also, of course, has been to be mindful of, there's some tools, like just because a new tech comes into our world, this is just my personal opinion, it doesn't always mean it's going to make your life better, even though it's faster, whatever, makes you more productive, right? TikTok is a great example. TikTok is one app I have never downloaded, and I never will, because that app is cocaine in a digital form, right? You've used it, I'm guessing. So it is, I already know, I don't have to use it to know that it's extremely addictive. It can take you down wormholes. It can have you looking at stuff that you probably didn't want to, and have you just wasting a lot of time on the phone. So it's like, that's one tiny little instance where using that tech is probably not going to enrich my life, even though it's extremely entertaining and very fun, I'm sure. For me, and also like with that prompting, even though prompting complete beats or songs or lyrics or whatever, even though absolutely, I mean, talk about speed improvement of like, just I need something to kind of get me going. It gets you going. I'm kind of struggling with that right now, because my joy is not necessarily knowing where my track's going to go. Like I might have an idea, right? But I kind of like it going at my pace, where it's like, I'm going to go in this direction. And if it feels right, you get that kind of dopamine rush, like, ooh, that's really cool. And that surprise, that's for me, the joy of creation, is that surprise of, I didn't know this track was going to go here, and it did. Or even better, when you're you're hitting that sort of like, this track isn't working, I think I should just give up on it. And then some new lead you play around with, something accidental happens, or you change something around, you're like, oh my gosh, I unlocked it. This track now works. I'm excited about it again, right? You get back on the horse. So I'm definitely trying to be very mindful about some AI tools I think will help that process. Some feels like it's, for me, exporting that creative process to a algorithm. And while that might be more productive, might be more economically feasible for clients, is it something that I really want to adopt if it's going to take away my joy? Yeah, you're right. If I just wanted to get placements and get a lot of money, prompt all day long. I don't care about the creation process. I'm just trying to game the system, right? It's like we're just gaming it. But yeah, there's this deeper element of us, and I think these are these like greater topics we've been kind of dancing around, which is, we're human beings, we're creators. So what are we in this for? And you had that great point. What are you doing this for? Do you just want the income? Do you just want the placements? Are you loving the joy of creation? There's no right answer for that. We all have to kind of answer that for ourselves. I'll let you have the last word, man, before we end this up.
No, it's been a great conversation. And why are you creating music? I've heard some folks go as far as saying, I'm just going to stop creating music because it's over. I'm like, dude, if this is going to make you stop creating music, maybe creating music really isn't a priority in your psyche. I knew when I was a kid, I wanted to be a musician. And a lot of folks that are successful in the industry knew early on, if I had that deep passion, it was never a doubt. I'm going to be musically involved somehow. If you're doing it for the revenue only, if you're easily dissuaded to stop because of new technology, maybe, go find something that you're really passionate about and put your psyche into that. It's frustrating when folks get that upset and say, I'm going to quit. Maybe you're not doing it for the right reasons. I think AI can help you become more creative. I think in the TV sync world, a lot of the low-hanging fruit, there will be a culling of the herd in the sync world. People that are known for, I write drones. Yeah, I have Omnisphere and hold down a patch, and then I put a second one, and now it's layered, and I've got a 2-minute drone. That's not creating. That's just, anyway. So I think for a light of hope, music producers, TV music editors, I don't think they're going to stop and take the time to generate stuff and see what works. They're going to still need us to create a viable, useful catalog of already proven, qualified content. So I think the function of music libraries may change. They may add a section. Maybe here's an idea. Here's a catalog of live musician created stuff. And here's a separate catalog of AI generated stuff. You're offering two product sets now. But music supervisors and editors are still going to need to go to vetted resources because they don't have the time to try AI and see, oh, does that work? Does that not? They're going to do the typical click, okay, 30 seconds later, click, yeah, this works. So music libraries and therefore music library clients like ourselves or composers are going to have work still. So learn the tools, be able to provide music for your clients because the editors are still going to go to libraries. Libraries are going to still go to us. Make sense?
Absolutely.
I think there's hope.
Absolutely, man. I love that. Yeah, and I've definitely shared that kind of vision of the future where we use this. We basically harness this technology to aid ourselves. So I do hope that happens. So stay tuned, everybody. The fair use debate will continue on here. We're still waiting for some court to come down. There's a lot of lawsuits going on right now. So I actually also have an entertainment attorney that's going to come on the channel. So we'll definitely dive into those topics as well. So Paul, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the great conversation. I think we should all be having more of these. It's soul-searching stuff, right? This is some deep topics and some interesting times we are certainly in. So you guys should definitely go check out Paul's channel as I indicated before. Link is in the description box below. So thanks for your time today, buddy. I really appreciate it. And best of luck. Keep up your great work with your sync licensing career and hopefully some more amazing opportunities come your way.
We'll see you online, Jess. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.